Hello BookTube, it's Joshua here, and I'm going to be doing the Don't You Forget About Me tag. I was tagged by Book Chat with Pat. Thank you, Pat, for tagging me. And this tag was created by Jolene at Bookworm Adventure Girl, and it was inspired by Brian. So thank you to both of them as well for creating this awesome tag. It says here, you decide how many books to share with each prompt. I'll probably just do a couple books per prompt. Number one is Clean Slates. Books you've read that you don't remember anything about. And for that, I have two books, and they're both by Shakespeare. It's Othello and King Lear. I've read each of them only once, and I remember generally what happens in the plot, kind of, but I don't remember anything beyond that. I don't remember any of the language that was used. I don't remember the themes or, I really, there's not much there. I'm really going to have to, one of these days, I'm really going to have to dive into Shakespeare and try to read, to try to reread the tragedies that I've read by him, as well as maybe read through all of his plays, try to do like a full Shakespeare read through. The only Shakespeare play that I do really remember is Hamlet, actually. As you can see, I have this this Oxford World Classics paperback of Hamlet. I've only read the play once, but I've seen live performances. Well, I've seen live performances on YouTube. I haven't actually been to a live performance, but I remember this play very well, and I cherish it. So I really should get into the other tragedies and into the other plays, because I think that would be really rewarding, but I just haven't done it yet. So number two is Genie's Lamp, books you wish you could forget. And I have one book for that. I think I like most things that I read, and of course I don't want to be too negative on this channel either, but this is one book that I wish I could forget. It was assigned to me in my first year of university, and it's just a memoir of a guy. Okay, it's called Permanent Astonishment, a memoir by Tomson Highway. He's an indigenous author who grew up. Where did he grow up? He grew up in the subarctic. I believe in kind of the northeast Canada, around there. And I just found it to be very, very poorly crafted. It felt like he was just writing his life down without really caring about there being a coherent narrative. And sometimes he had these, sometimes there'd be some mannerisms in his prose. He would repeat these verbal expressions, and that just seemed to me kind of lazy. And in general, his prose was just kind of ungrammatical as well. So I didn't really care for it. Yeah. Forgotten Gems, number three. Books you think need more love. And I have a couple of those. The first one is Tennyson's Idylls of the King. I don't see Tennyson in general talked about too much on YouTube, and I especially don't see this book talked about. Essentially, this book is made up of a bunch of different Arthurian legends. There are maybe, I don't know, a dozen stories in here. And Tennyson writes, well, he's a poet, so he writes in blank verse, meaning just like iambic pentameter, but without rhyme, without end rhymes, that is. And Tennyson is always so brilliant when he's writing in that form. It's just frequently beautiful and frequently so engaging to read, because he's a master at poetry, and he always makes his stories very interesting. Either he's describing something extremely beautiful, or he's just telling a beautiful story, really. Yeah, I love this book, and I love Tennyson in general. The second book for Forgotten Gems would be anything by G.K. Chesterton, I would say. I haven't read everything by G.K. Chesterton. I haven't read his short stories. I know he has these Father Brown stories, which I would like to get into sometime, hopefully soon. But I've read mostly his nonfiction. And I want to read you actually just a little passage from his book about Dickens, because he was a Christian apologist, he was a literary critic, he was a poet, he was a fiction writer, a memoirist, or he wrote his own autobiography. So he wrote a lot. His body of work is very variable, and this is just from his book on Dickens, and I find the passage to be very, very, very interesting. If we are to look for lessons, here at least is the last and deepest lesson of Dickens. It is in our own daily life that we are to look for the portents and the prodigies. This is the truth, not merely of the fixed figures in our life, the wife, the husband, the fool that fills the sky. It is true of the whole stream and substance of our daily experience. Every instant we reject a great fool merely because he is foolish. Every day we neglect tootses and swivellers, guppies and joblings, simmeries and flashers. Every day we lose the last sight of Jobling and Chuckster, the analytical chemist, or the Marchioness. Every day we are missing a monster whom we might easily love, and an imbecile whom we should certainly admire. This is the real gospel of Dickens. The inexhaustible opportunities offered by the liberty and the variety of man. Compared with this life, all public life, all fame, all wisdom, is by its nature cramped and cold and small. For on that defined and lighted public stage, men are of necessity forced to profess one set of accomplishments, to rise to one rigid standard. It is the utterly unknown people, who can grow in all directions like an exuberant tree. It is in our interior lives that we find that people are too much themselves. It is in our private life that we find people intolerably individual, that we find them swelling into the enormous contours and taking on the colors of caricature. Many of us live publicly with featureless public puppets, images of the small public abstractions. It is when we pass our own private gate and open our own secret door that we step into the land of the giants. And Chesterton frequently writes like that. It's just so delightful to read. And then the number 4, and this is the last prompt, forget-me-nots, books you will always remember. I have 2 books here. The first is Pride and Prejudice. This was one of the first classics that I read, and I think I have an interesting reading history with this, because the first time I read it, I didn't care for it at all. I was like, well, I don't really get this. It's just some dull romance, is what I thought the first time I read it. But of course, it was so famous and everyone loved it that I read it a second time, and I tried to, I guess, open my mind even more to what it was doing. And the second time, I just kind of fell in love with it. It was, I think I was smiling the entire time that I read it, because there is so much delight in this novel. So many of the characters make you just laugh all the time, and yeah, I dearly love the book. I certainly will never forget it, and I hope to reread it all throughout my life. The last book that I will be showing on this video is Earthsea. So I certainly will never forget this entire series. It's a huge thing, and I enjoyed reading every part of it. But in particular, I don't think I'll ever forget the 5th book in this series, which was a short story collection. I found that to be the highlight of this series. I don't know why, but maybe the shorter format changed something in the way that the Guin was writing, but she was able to hit so many emotional and profound notes in those short stories. She was able to convey a lot that connected with me, maybe more so than in the novels. But that'll be all for today. The last thing it says here is to tag some cool people who love books. So I'm tagging Steve Donahue, Aaron Facer, David Novak, and Maria Andrea Belmont. I'll leave links to all their channels in the description. I'll also leave links to Book Chat with Pat's channel, and Jolene's channel, and Brian's channel. And thank you, Book Chat with Pat, for tagging me. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Jolene, for creating the tag. Goodbye, BookTube.